So today I'm going to be talking about tariffs, but first, real quick, I'm going to talk about why the topic of today's video is not the deportation of Kilmar Garcia. For those of you who don't know, what happened there is the Trump administration took him and deported him to a slave prison in El Salvador, and the Trump administration now admits that they deported the wrong man. But they say there's nothing they can do about it because they already sent him. So, too bad. Whoops, he gets to go be a slave forever now. Mainly the reason this isn't the topic of today's video is because if I were to express my earnest feelings on this matter, it would be almost certainly criminal. Even in less insane times, bare minimum, I would get a knock on my door from some men in suits who would have some questions. And I don't like answering questions from men in suits. So that's not going to be the topic of today's video. If you want to get a rough idea of how fucking pissed I am, you can go watch my video on the deportation of Jersey Barrios, and you can multiply that anger times about 10, and you can get a pretty good fucking picture of how I feel about this. But because I don't like talking to men in suits, that's not going to be the main topic of today's video, which will instead be Liberation Day. We're free, you guys. We're fucking free. We've declared our independence from trade ties with the rest of the world, our independence from prosperity, our independence from being a functioning fucking modern economy. Alright? We're free. So what is the deal with these tariffs though, right? Because when you look at that chart that Trump put out, it kind of looks like we're just retaliating. Right? He put up that chart, our discounted retaliatory tariff, where he lists the tariff or tariff equivalent that the country charges to us on one side of the column, and our tariff rate we're going to charge to them that's discounted 50% for most of them. So if you don't really know a whole lot of things about the world, or if you expect Trump to be telling the truth about anything still somehow by this time of your life, this seems like we're just doing retaliatory tariffs to try to get them to bring their tariff rates down. As I forget who, but some Republican figure said of these tariff rates and our retaliatory tariff rates, the numbers don't lie. Well, unless you're lying and totally made up all the numbers, which seems to be the case for this entire chart. For example, South Korea, it said tariffs us at a rate of like 50%, whereas their official tariff rate towards us is something like 2%, and their effective tariff rate towards us is something like 0.79%, if I'm remembering correctly off the top of my head, which I'm probably not, because my head isn't fucking that full of facts. It's maybe more than any of the people who thought that South Korea tariffed us at 50%, but it's still not that full of facts, so I could be remembering wrong off the top of my head, but it's still very different from 50%. Even if you go with that official rate that's like 2%, that is 25-fold lower than 50% tariffs. So what's the deal with these numbers then? Did Trump just pull them out of his ass? Make them up whole cloth? Well, most people assumed that at first, right? Because that seems like a very Trumpian thing to do. But no, as it turns out, someone did the math, and they figured out what he's actually reflecting here with all of these numbers. And it's even dumber and even more Trumpian. What he did was, he took our trade deficit, which if you don't know what a trade deficit is, that's where we buy more from a country than we sell to them. So he took the dollar value of our trade deficit with these countries, and he divided it by the amount that they export to us, and he called that a tariff equivalent and included that as a tariff on the side of the chart showing how much tariffs those countries charge us. So the problem with this is that it's the exact fucking opposite of reality. A tariff is a barrier on trade. What he is doing is calling trade a barrier on trade. This is some true 1984 fucking war is peace bullshit, man. He's calling trade a barrier on trade and then putting tariffs, retaliatory tariffs, in response to that. But that's not the dumbest part of this. The dumbest part of this is that because of the way he derived these tariff equivalents that these countries are charging us, because he's basing it on trade deficit, that means that the countries we are putting the highest tariffs on are the countries that we buy the most things from. So it is a policy that seems tailor-made to increase inflation the most possible, because the more we buy from a country, the more our consumers are dependent upon goods from those countries, the higher the tariff is going to be. And this has no exceptions that make any kind of economic sense. For example, the United States does not have a domestic coffee industry outside of Hawaii. Hawaii grows a little bit of coffee, not nearly enough to provide coffee for the country though. There's no tariff exemption for coffee in these new tariffs. There is no domestic industry to protect. Even with this very 1800s, early 1900s protectionist mindset that Trump is going into this with, there is no domestic industry to protect, but he's tariffing it anyway. You're going to pay more for coffee anyway, because Trump does not understand economics. It's really that fucking simple. Trump has a child's understanding of economics. A child who read one book about the 1800s once and then came up with an economic plan. That's what Trump is rolling with. Another example, there is no exemption in these tariffs for raw materials. What little industry we do have in this country, because we aren't as industrial as we used to be. We have a mostly post-industrial economy. But the industry that we do have is high-tech industry. We don't, by and large, produce raw materials. We produce a little bit of steel, but not very much. We focus on taking raw materials and making them into something much more valuable. We have high-tech industry. But there's no tariff exemption on raw material imports, so we are going to lose a fuckload of really good industrial jobs that we do have in high-tech industries, because people are not going to be able to afford the goods that they make. You are not going to be able to have high-tech consumer goods, and the people who have jobs making those high-tech consumer goods are not going to have those jobs anymore, because there's no exemption on raw materials imports. This tariff policy, let's put it in perspective. The Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act was kind of the the nail in the fucking coffin of American economy before the Great Depression. We were already sinking into it a little bit, and we put this big tariff act in place to try to stop the Great Depression, and instead it sent it into a fucking death spiral. The median tariff in Trump's new tariff plan that he announced yesterday is higher than the tariff that sent the Great Depression into a death spiral. So, say goodbye to your 401k, say goodbye to any good high-tech industrial jobs, say goodbye to your morning cup of coffee, say goodbye to anything that relies on international trade, which is fucking everything these days. Just say goodbye to it. You're gonna not be able to afford it if it's available at all. unless you are very, very wealthy. Now for me, personally, I have job security. I'm a firefighter. I have job security. The biggest impact on me is I'm going to have to work a lot of overtime just to break even. I'm going to have to work a lot more 24-hour shifts, give away a lot more whole days of my life just to fucking be where I'm at right now. But I will still have my job. I will still get by. A lot of you are fucked. A lot of you will not have your job. A lot of you will not get by. And that's a fucking tragedy. You know, a lot of people, and I have a hard time not falling into this. A lot of people, because a lot of the people who are going to be hardest hit are Trump voters themselves, because the average Trump voter is, it flipped in 2024. The median Trump voter, the median Republican voter now has a lower income than the median Democrat voter. And it's hard not to fall into this fucking cycle of being like callous, right? You voted for this. Fucking, you get what you play stupid games, win stupid prizes. And it's hard not to. But most Trump voters who voted, who really supported this tariff shit, are just uneducated on economics. They just don't know that much. They just don't know very many things. And you don't know what you don't know. That's fine. It's a shame that you made a disastrous fucking decision for the whole country because of it. But I don't wish harm on you because you didn't know things. But there's another group of Trump voters. These fucking highly educated finance bros who thought that Trump was kidding about the tariffs. And you know what? I'm glad that these people's 401ks are ruined. I'm glad that their investments are going to be ruined. Trump every day during the campaign stood up and said, I am the tariff man. I'm going to tariff the fuck out of everybody. If you think there's a goddamn thing in this world that's not going to be tariffed when I'm done with it, you're fucking wrong. I am the tariff man. And these well-educated finance bro types looked at that and thought, nobody could be that stupid. Nobody would pursue economics that disastrous. Clearly he's kidding. I'm going to vote for him anyway. I fucking hate those people. They can be as ruined. I wish for every ounce of ruination possible on those people, and I wish for the softest landing possible on anyone who just really thought that tariffs were going to help them. That's where I'm at. So, to recap, we are needlessly pissing off our allies. We aren't tariffing Russia. We're tariffing uninhabited islands, but we aren't tariffing Russia. Trump says that we aren't tariffing Russia because we already aren't trading with Russia right now, but we also don't trade with uninhabited islands, so that's a fucking lie. We aren't tariffing Russia because Trump likes Russia. If you have a good industrial job, you're probably going to lose it because the materials that we use to make good industrial products, high-tech products, are going to become too expensive. If you're a consumer, you're not going to be able to buy these high-tech products anyway. If you like having a cup of coffee in the morning, you're going to pay more for that for no goddamn reason at all. Maybe in the long run, you'll get the privilege of, after you've lost your good job because of this, you'll get the privilege of having your fucking arm ripped off in an 1800 style factory when all the third world industry comes back to this country that Trump so desperately wants. And that is the news of the world today. And it's about all I have to say about that.